The cry came first, a thin, desperate wail that sliced through the burning quiet of the southern Colorado plains. It was the kind of sound that didn't belong in the wild, too fragile, too human. Tahan reined in his mare, his breath steady but his pulse sharp. The sun bled low across the sky, a crimson wound spilling light over the dust and sage. The air shimmered with heat, carrying the faint smell of scorched grass and iron. He listened again. The world was still, too still. No birds, no rustle of wind through the mesquite. Then the cry came once more, weaker but real. Tahan nudged his mare forward. Her hooves cracked dry earth as they wove through thorny brush and jagged rock. His eyes, dark, steady, scanned the land. Once a proud Comanche warrior, now a ghost between worlds, he lived where neither tribe nor settler claimed him. The white spat a savage at his passing. His own people saw only the scars of betrayal, but the cry didn't care about bloodlines or ghosts. It was a call for mercy. Near a cluster of cactus, he found the source, a boy no older than 8, lying curled in the dust. His skin was pale beneath grime, lips dry, breath shallow. His small hand clutched a torn piece of cloth embroidered with a rough horseshoe. Tahan knelt. The boy's whisper trembled like a candle in the wind. Mama! That single word cracked something deep inside him, a sound he hadn't heard since the war took everything he'd ever called home. He lifted the child carefully, feeling fever burn beneath the frail skin. The prairie stretched endless around them, offering no answers, no mercy. With a quiet resolve, Tahan tied the boy gently to his saddle and turned his mare toward the shelter he called home, a lean-to of weathered wood and stretched hide by a half-dry creek. The ride was long, the boy's breath a fragile rhythm against the beating hooves. By the time they reached the creek, night had fallen, and the stars were cold and sharp as arrowheads. Inside the shelter, the firelight danced on Tahan's weathered face. He brewed a tea of sage and cedar, feeding it carefully to the boy. Fever raged, but the child lived. As the flames flickered low, Tahan sat with his rifle across his knees, listening to the boy's restless murmurs. "Mama," the whisper echoed again. Tahan closed his eyes. He knew that kind of pain, the kind that left a man hollow, walking through a world that no longer recognized him. Whatever had torn this child from his mother, he would see it made right. 40 miles east, beneath the same blanket of stars, Clara Dawson stood on the porch of her late husband's ranch. The prairie wind cut cold through her shawl, but she didn't flinch. Her eyes, tired, red-rimmed, searched the horizon as they had every night for 3 months. Somewhere out there, her boy was lost. She held a piece of cloth in her trembling hands, its edge embroidered with a horseshoe, a twin to the one her son Eli had carried the day he vanished. She could still see his face that morning, laughing as he climbed onto the wagon bound for the trading post. Then came the gunfire, the smoke, the silence. When the dust cleared, Eli was gone. At first, the townsfolk helped her search, riding through the gulches with lanterns, calling his name into the darkness. But as days turned to weeks, pity soured into whispers. A mother doesn't lose her boy like that. Clara had stopped listening. Hope was all she had left, and even that was a knife that twisted deeper each dawn. When word came from a hunter at sunrise that a Comanche had been seen near the red rocks, leading a white child, her heart froze. The man's tone dripped venom. They're raising a posse, he said, and no savage takes one of ours and walks free. Clara's jaw tightened. She swung into her saddle before he could finish. Then I'll ride ahead, she said. If he's alive, I'll bring my boy home. The prairie opened before her, vast and merciless. The trail cut west, a scar through the red earth. Each hoofbeat carried her deeper into the borderlands, where stories said Comanche spirits haunted the night and settlers vanished without a trace. But Clara didn't believe in ghosts. She believed in Eli. By noon, the cliffs rose like sentinels against the sky. The sun burned high, turning the rock to fire. Clara dismounted, scanning the ground. A small footprint caught her eye, half buried in dust, but small enough to steal her breath. Nearby, a boot print followed, too large to be Eli's. Her pulse quickened. She called his name, voice trembling. Ellie. Ellie. Only the wind answered. Then came the sound of hooves. 3 riders emerged from the canyon shadows, faces she knew. Bandits, the same men who had burned her wagon and taken her boy. "Well, look who's still breathing," one sneered, raising his rifle. Before she could move, a shot cracked through the air. The bandit's grin vanished as he dropped, blood blooming on his chest. The others spun, firing wildly, but their bullets hit only dust. A shadow moved through the canyon. Silent, swift, merciless. Another shot, another man fell. The third turned to flee but didn't make it far. When the smoke cleared, a lone figure stepped from the dusk. Tahan, his rifle lowered, his eyes cold as flint. He said nothing, only motioned westward, toward a faint curl of smoke rising from a hidden ridge. He is here. Clara followed, her heart pounding in disbelief. Could her boy truly be there? They rode in silence until the canyon narrowed into a creek bed. A small shelter stood tucked beneath a ledge. Tahan halted, signaling her to stay. He slipped inside, then returned, his face unreadable, but his nod certain readable. Clara pushed past him, her breath catching as she saw a small figure lying on a bed of furs. "Eli," she whispered. The boy stirred. His eyes fluttered open, glassy but alive. "Mama," the word shattered her. She fell to her knees, gathering him into her arms. Tears streaked through the dust on her face as she rocked him, the horseshoe cloth still clutched in his hand. Tahan stood at the doorway, watching in silence. His eyes softened for just a moment before hardening again at the sound of distant thunder. "Hooves. If they come," he said quietly. "If they come," he said quietly. "The men who took him, they track us." Clara rose, her arms still around Eli. "Then we stand," she said. Tahan studied her. Beneath the exhaustion, he saw a fire that matched his own. "Stay low," he told her. The night descended fast. The first shot came like lightning, splintering the shelter's wooden beam. Clara ducked, shielding Eli as Tahan fired back, his rifle steady, his aim unerring. One bandit fell by the creek. Another charged, shouting curses, but Tahan's knife flashed, ending the fight in silence. The air filled with smoke and the acrid scent of gunpowder. The last man fled into the dark, his screams fading into the wind. When the gunfire ceased, the night was still again. Tahan stood guard at the entrance, blood soaking his shoulder. Clara eased Eli onto the furs, brushing his hair with shaking hands. "We were hurt," she said, moving toward him. He shook his head, dismissing it. But when she tore a strip from her sleeve and pressed it to his wound, he didn't resist. "You saved us," she whispered. "The wind led me," he replied simply. "He called for you in his sleep. I listened." She reached into her coat and pulled out her half of the horseshoe cloth. "This belongs with you now," she said, pressing it into his hand. He hesitated, then closed his rough fingers around it. "But not all white hearts forget," he said, voice low as the creek's murmur. Dawn broke over the cliffs, painting the world gold. Clara mounted her mare with Eli before her. Tahan saddled his own, silent and distant. "You should come with us," she said. He shook his head. "My path stays here." His eyes swept the horizon, ever watchful. The prairie belonged to men like him, half seen, half believed. Clara wanted to thank him, but words felt too small. She only nodded. "Then may the wind guide you." Tahan's gaze lingered on the boy one last time. "He will remember you strong," he said. Then he turned away, fading into the rising light, his figure swallowed by the vastness. The ride back to town was long and quiet. Eli slept against her chest, his small hand still clutching the horseshoe cloth. When the first rooftops came into view, people stopped to stare. Whispers rose, then silence. Clara dismounted in front of the general store. No words were needed. The sight of her son was answer enough. The sheriff tipped his hat, eyes heavy with shame. No one met her gaze. That night, Clara sat on her porch with Eli asleep in her lap. The stars stretched endless above, cold and watchful. She listened to the wind and thought she heard it, soft, distant, a Comanche prayer drifting through the dark. Maybe it was imagination, or maybe it was Tahan's voice, carried on the same wind that had brought her son back to her. She looked down at Eli, his breathing steady, peaceful. "Rest now," she whispered. "We're home," the prairie sighed, the night calm once more. Yeah. But somewhere beyond the cliffs, a lone rider moved through the darkness, bound to the land by a promise unspoken but eternal. The man between worlds, the ghost who listened when the wind called, rode on beneath the starlit sky, his heart at last a little lighter. And the plains of Colorado, for once, held not only loss, but grace.